by Senator Marco Rubio. Good morning, Senator. Always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
I want to start with TikTok. You tweeted about it yesterday. I don't think the American people understand why this is a big deal. Would you explain to them why TikTok is a national security issue, not just a harmless app?
Right, exactly. So I think there's a lot of confusion. I've heard a lot of people talking about, but the app and the video, it has nothing to do with the content of TikTok or who they're for or against. The videos are actually funny, and I understand why it's a global phenomenon and so forth. The problem with TikTok is it is owned by a company that is owned by a Chinese company, and it's called ByteDance. And these companies can be compelled to turn over data. These apps, when you go on this app and you post a video or you watch a video or you register an account and you do all these other things, you are dumping all kinds of personal data about yourself, all kinds of stuff that they can then track the phone for the things you buy, where you go, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this can be controlled by a foreign government. That's the biggest problem with TikTok. Its relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, and that has to end. And let me just tell you, we have entered an era in which the personal data of America, that means the places you go, the things you look at, and the things you buy, the things you spend money on, all these things, that personal data is the most valuable commodity on earth and will be for the next 100 years. It's what medicine is going to be based on. It's what commerce is going to be based on. It's what politics is going to be based on. It's how you influence societies. So this is a massive threat to our national security.
Senator Rubio, you're a dad. I have been telling my daughter, who's got small grandchildren, I got very young grandchildren, do not let them have apps whenever they get a phone, and I hope it's not until they're 25. Don't ever let them have apps because apps are the gateway to data. Do you agree with me? Do you talk to your kids about this, about how data is just being stored up on them?
Yeah, I know, and I chuckle because I asked back in October of last year. I may have been the first person to bring up TikTok last October when I asked for a CFIUS review, which is how the government reviews sales to foreign companies of critical infrastructure. And I made a point, because when you ban something, when you tell people you can't have something, especially young people like my kids, their attitude is you're taking something away from me that's fun because you don't like what's on it. It has nothing to do with the stuff that's on it. Absolutely not. This has to do with the data, and that's exactly what I said a year ago in October. And I was not the most popular guy among my kids' circle of friends, and I suspect that there's been some evasion effort even in my own home because look, it's a very compelling app. I get it, okay, and it has a lot of interesting things about it. That you look at these videos being produced by a billion people around the world, and it's very crafty, and I have no problem with the content of it. It is what it is. It is the data part of it that needs to be dealt with, and that's why it can't be owned by a company that's controlled by under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party.
It's not an app. It's a periscope on your kids. That's what people need to know.
Well, it's a periscope on the intelligence, political, military, and business leaders of 15 years and 20 years from now. That's what it is. And that's how the Chinese do. They don't do 5-year plans. They do 100-year plans.
I hope you succeed in this. Let me move to the next thing, which is, first of all, thank you for PPP. You and Susan Collins did PPP. It saved, I run the Nixon Foundation. It saved jobs. I know how it worked. I want to thank you personally because it saves jobs. Now, I wish they would listen to you and Susan Collins on this current bill. Is there going to be a deal? Because not only do we need to make sure PP's there, we need, like even Schumer knows, we need local broadcasting assistance. We need all sorts of stuff. Is there going to be a bill?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, right now we're obviously caught in a vice between, some who want to do all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the pandemic and others who feel like that we need to stop spending any money at all and let the free market fix it. Here's the problem, and that is that what we're facing now is a national emergency. And in times of a national emergency like this, the government has to play a greater role than it would in normal times. I wouldn't favor any of these policies that we're talking about as a permanent policy or as a policy in normal times. But these are not normal times. And if we don't act now on things like PPP and more, there is going to be, long-term structural damage to the economy that's going to make it almost impossible to ever get the debt under control and not to mention, grow our economy again.
I just hope you're successful. Senator Rubio, some political questions. You sat across from me during the Republican debates in 2016. I threw hard balls, but, balls and strikes. Do you have any confidence that we will have debates with people who will ask Joe Biden tough questions?
That's a great question. I hope so, because I think the country deserves that. Obviously, I don't know who they've picked as a moderator and so forth, but I do hope so because the country deserves that. And and I think even more importantly now, look, my biggest issue is this: that where the country faces massive challenges, not just the pandemic, but the confrontations that we're having with China right now are truly generational in scope in terms of what it's going to mean for the world. Radical Islam is on the retreat in parts of the world, but it could resurge at any time. The Iranians with their nuclear ambitions. We need strength. And I just figured, I just don't believe Joe Biden is strong enough to stand up and face these different challenges, not to mention elements of his own party that want to pull the country far, far to the left. And that's why it's important that he be challenged fairly in a debate so Americans can see whether or not he has that strength. I don't think he does.
Now, I don't think it's possible to get the commission to be serious about this. I would trust Lester Holt. I would trust Dana Bash. I would trust John Dickerson. Who do you trust to moderate these debates? And I would, by the way, I would add Rachel Maddow and me. I would make sure you had a center left and a center right journalist to make sure each other side is fully represented. But who would you trust to do that? You've been through this gauntlet.
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think Brett Baer is another name that I would throw out there. That's someone that I think is a serious journalist and how he approaches things. I don't think any of them want Chris Wallace on there. He'll go at you no matter who you are, and put you on the vice under the vice there. But I haven't thought a lot about who the individuals are, but I do think the country deserves a fair debate. And look, throughout the history of our debates, there have been times that you look at it and point to it and say, "Oh, that was an unfair question. I didn't like the way that was posed." But we're in a very different time right now. It's become increasingly hard for many in the mainstream media to sort of report on President Trump as a news item as opposed to become activists. It's just, I'm not saying everyone. There are people that try and work at it very hard, but all you need to do is turn on cable television for 5 minutes and you can see it right away. There's no news being reported anymore. It's outrage media, and then there's a personal tinge to it that I think has gone way over the top and done serious damage to an important institution.
It's truly very alarming what's happened to cable news. Let me close by asking you, I have characterized the Democratic agenda this way, Senator Rubio: hack, pack, tax, and slash. Hack the filibuster to pieces, pack the Senate by adding D.C. and Puerto Rico as states, pack the Supreme Court by expanding it, tax everything that moves, and slash defense spending. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think that's their agenda. I always deal with the D.C. issue and Puerto Rico separately. Maybe I don't have time to get into it, but I don't think those two are the same. That said, going back to the other points you make, yeah, I think that I believe that their reaction to a Trump administration is going to be what you've seen when they're not in the White House, and that is far left overreach in a number of directions. I think the filibuster's gone, most certainly. I think the Supreme Court, they'll look for efforts to pack it and add more justices to it to get the outcome they want. And I think there are some of these policy items that you see thrown out there that have been thrown out there in the past, like talking points for French candidates. I think these things could actually be pursued. And without a filibuster and just majority votes in House and Senate and a Democratic White House, these things could become reality very quickly.
Well, I want to go back to statehood. I think there's a case for Puerto Rican statehood. They would have to vote for it themselves, and then it would have to come through. But that is not the same as D.C. statehood. I think that's unconstitutional, but the Democrats voted for it last week in the House, and they will roll them together to make it more persuasive for D.C., even if Puerto Rico hasn't held the vote. And they've held lots of votes on that. So I do treat that differently.
I just think they're different, obviously, but part of it is what you said, and that is that the District of Columbia was designed to be a federal district for a reason. There was a reason why it was designed to be that way, and as you said, that is it's something that's serious constitutional questions attached to it.
So my last question goes to my last part. They'll tax everything, everyone knows that, but they will slash defense even as the great power competition with China comes into clear view. Are they committed to appeasement with Iran and China, in your view?
I think there are two problems. The first is, frankly, the good news is that China is a bipartisan issue right now, but I do think that there are elements within the Democratic Party that will view anything that Trump did, we have to do the opposite, which will naturally lead you to retreat on a lot of these reasons. It's the reasons why I believe with all my heart that China wants to see Donald Trump lose this election.
Yes.
And on the issue of Iran, they'll return to the Iran nuclear deal, which is the number one item on the Iranian agenda. And the reason why they want that nuclear deal is because it provided them not just a way out of economic crisis, but the billions of dollars that Iran wants to use to build its conventional forces, continue to improve its long-range missiles to one day be able to threaten the United States from over there, and when they're ready to do it, flip the switch and move to nuclear weapons.
And so it comes down to whether or not we will hold the Senate. I know you are out there campaigning for a lot of senators like Steve Daines. Susan Collins must win. You work with her so closely. I have two great affiliates in Portland. They're big flamethrowers. Is she not the most among the most respected senators in the United States Senate?
Well, not only that, she is. I didn't know Susan Collins before I came to the U.S. Senate, and she is among the most serious, hardworking people I've ever been around in any setting. I mean, she goes deep into every single issue. She spends the time on it. She's never winging it. She knows a lot about a lot of different things. Maine is always on her mind. She knows every nook and cranny of the state, every issue, every small business interest there, everything you can imagine. A ferocious fighter for that. But I just don't know anyone that works harder. I mean, in so many ways, I really think more senators sort of took the time and spent time and focus the way she does. The country would have much better debates and much better public policy.
I agree. Senator Marco Rubio, always pleasure to speak with you. Come back early and often, and good luck on the TikTok issue and on every other issue. I like talking to you, Senator. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Always,